Hello everyone, my name is Cole, and in today's video we are going to be building the Need for Speed Mercedes 190E ASAP Rocky hero car thing from Need for Speed Unbound, which is not even a game yet, but it will be soon, probably by the time you're watching this video. So before I show you guys how I designed this model, right here, we have a couple of things. First, if you'd like to build this yourself, you can get the instructions at my website at the link in the description below if you'd like to support the channel a bit. And second, I assume most of you guys who are watching know what this car is. If you don't, basically the new Need for Speed Unbound is going to come out soon, and this is the hero car, or at least a car that is very important within the game, and that's why I have built it right here. Alright, so first we're going to design the car, and then I'll tell you guys about the car itself a bit more and kind of more of an overview part. So yeah, now that you guys have some details about the model, let's actually design the model. So like most of the models, I just started with a base plate first, which is, nothing too special. And then we basically started with the side skirts because that looked kind of like the easiest thing to start with. This is a relatively intimidating looking model to start building. And so yeah, we just decided to start with these side skirts because once you have those done, it's typically a lot easier to build the rest of the model. So I started with this basic sideways building technique, which I think works pretty well. It's not the most insane technique, but I've used it on quite a few models and it looks really good. So an interesting thing you'll notice about this car, among various interesting things you'll notice about this car, is that it is half black and half white. And thus that makes for a very interesting building experience and also design experience. And it's also quite refreshing because you get to build the same model in two colors at once, and so as opposed to building like whatever other model in one color, you get to see what your model would look like in two different colors at the same time, which is very interesting. So then once we had the side skirts, we kind of did the sides themselves, like the door panel, and then we just used various brackets and things to get all these slopes into place, and I think it looks pretty good. There are quite a few various like ridges and stuff on the real car, and so we tried to replicate most of those. So then we moved on to the front bumper of the car because this seemed like the next easiest part to do, I guess. And so yeah, we started with the very bottom part with the front splitter, which is really low and really big. So yeah, that was relatively simple to do. And then we kind of built upwards from there, and it has these really interesting green fog lights in the real car, and so we integrated those as well. Now for the kind of lip on the front of this car, there were various techniques that I tried. First, we tried wedge plates, which wedge plates have way too many notches in them, and then the studs on top of them just didn't look right at all. So I decided to kind of make it like the Mercedes W140 that I had built previously, which was kind of sacrificed some detail for just looking cool. And so just decided to make the front bumper entirely square, and it ended up looking pretty good, I think. So then for the headlights, I tried various techniques. Originally I tried a arm that kind of held the headlight in place, and that worked okay, but then that didn't really hold it at the right angle. So I decided to use a technique which I had originally come up with for the W140 S-Class model, and that worked really well. And originally I went with transparent yellow headlights, and I switched those out, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then for the grille, I just used grill tiles and used some of these very handy 1x1 round plates with a bar on the bottom to hinge them upward slightly. Without that part, this model would have been a lot harder to build. In fact, most of the recent models would have been a lot harder to build because that part is just incredibly useful. So if you're looking for parts to buy, then buy a couple of these because they're super handy. Then the hood on top of that also uses these 1x1 round plates with bar to hinge the hood downwards very slightly. And yeah, ultimately I was very satisfied with this front end because it's extremely clean. There are no visible studs, very few gaps. Well, actually there are some gaps, but not a ton of gaps compared to some models. And yeah, I was just really happy with how it turned out. It looks a little bit exaggerated, but I don't mind it because it gives it kind of a cool cartoony almost look, which I think looks pretty good. As you can see here, the kind of how the front bumper goes together, it's a very interesting set of connections because first you have upside down building, then we have some combination of offset building that's offset both up and sideways, which is kind of interesting for basically that front lip. And then we have a bunch of hinges, and then we have some basically clip pieces with those 1x1 round plates. And we have more 1x1 round plates with bar to hinge the hood downward. And then on the fenders, we have the 1x2 plate with rail. And yeah, there's a lot going on here. But like I said, in the end, I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. Then I decided to start working on the windshield. So at first I tried the same piece that I used for the S-Class model, which looked good in the S-Class, but here it looked a bit too thin. I don't know, I wish it would kind of make a 7-wide windscreen because that would make things a lot easier. As much as I like the bar built windscreen, which is what I decided to go with, it looks a little bit unfinished, I guess, but still it works fine for now. And so yeah, I went with the bar built windscreen, white A-pillar on one side, black A-pillar on the other side. And then once I had decided what windscreen to use, I decided to work on the back. Now the back of this car has a lot of crazy stuff going on. It's very Need for Speed. Maybe the front of the car doesn't scream Need for Speed, the rear of the car really screams Need for Speed because we have a gigantic carbon diffuser, which is very Need for Speed, and we have a bumper delete as well where you can see some of the exposed chassis of the car. And so yeah, basically I started with that massive diffuser, which was actually not incredibly difficult to build. Same upside down building technique, basically attaching this rear diffuser upside down using the 1x1 plates with clips and then these 1x1 round plates with bars, and then that just connects really nicely. And then on top of that we integrated the exhaust, which I think looks really cool. And then we had to add the kind of exposed frame of the car or chassis, and so for that we just used basically a white 1x6 plate, and that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. But it actually looks just like it. Also at this point I swapped the rear fenders for like the large Speed Champions fenders for the city style fenders, because I realized on the real car it actually has these, you can actually see the rear wheels through like the rear bumper, which looks extremely cool. And so I decided I had to swap these fenders out so you could see them like on the real car. So I first tried to make the rear bumper 2 studs long, which looked too short, and then I figured 3 studs would look way too long, and also basically make this the same size as the S-Class. And in real life, I'm pretty sure this car is quite a bit shorter than an S-Class. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. Eventually I decided to do something that I had I don't think I've ever done it before. Basically a 2.5 stud long rear bumper, which required a lot of messing with stuff. But basically it's attached using jumper plates. And I'll explain how I compensated the rest of the model for that, because obviously that throws off a whole bunch of different things when you make one part offset like that. But once I had figured to make it offset, basically I just added a layer of plates on top of that exposed rear bumper, then added the taillights, and then added the really cool looking New York license plate, which is a really nice contrast to the black and white of the car. And then this is basically where stuff became a bit tricky because of the offset building. So I wanted to use these just cheese slopes to the rear fender. And as you can see, they didn't really fit on the standard technique that I had going, because I was going to use the 1x2 plate with rail again to basically fill that half plate gap. Now as you can see, this setup required a bunch of just adjustment jumper plates, but eventually I figured out a way to make it fit, which is quite satisfying, because I originally thought this was going to be impossible to fix, but I was able to figure it out, and thus we have this really smooth looking line of cheese slopes. So from there I decided to work on the rear wing, and the wing on this car is extremely cool. It's the same wing, like I said, as the 190 Evo 2, which is just a really massive wing. It was pretty simple to design. It's just basically wedge plates on either side, and then a tile on brackets on top, and then it's mounted to the car with brackets. It's nothing too crazy. It's very similar to the wing I put on the official Supra set a long time ago, but yeah, it looks really cool. And under it we put kind of a wicker bill spoiler, I think it's called, something like that, but that kind of sticks out the rear, and that looks really cool as well. And then at this point we were moving so fast with body work, I was like, okay, we're gonna do the interior later, just gonna put the roof on it, and then once we're got the roof on it, then we'll add the interior. So I started with the seat pillars, and I used a technique which is also, again, similar to the S-Class model. Obviously you can borrow a lot of techniques from that model, considering it's a very similar car. So basically it's a brick with a stud on the side, and then a clip piece, and then a 1x1 round plate with a bar, and then a wedge plate, or in this case a wedge tile. Originally I tried a wedge plate and it wasn't really the right shape, so I used a wedge tile in this case, and it looked really good. And then I added the rear window, which I originally used the tile for, again, another technique from the S-Class. I did swap this out eventually for basically one with grill tiles all over it to represent the crazy louvers that are on the real car. And then from there we worked on the roof, which was not incredibly difficult. It was a little bit interesting to try and build a roof and at the same time build it half black, half white. But it worked, and then we just added some B-pillars under that, and we were all ready to go. And so I just kind of stuck it on there to see how it would look, and it looked pretty good, and that kind of gave me enough motivation to finish the interior, which I did not record just because it was pretty boring, honestly. It's basically the same as any other car interior I've built, because I tend to go for just exterior detail over interior detail, so it looks fine. There's 2 very aggressive racing seats in front, like the real car, and then you have a full steering wheel, center console, rear seats, nothing too crazy, but it's all there. So let's talk a brief bit about some of the other changes I made after I kind of finished the design bit. So obviously the wheels in this car are very special, considering they're almost all different. Basically all 4 of them are using my stance technique, which I talked about almost over a year ago. But basically it's a headlight brick with a bar, and then a bar with a clip, and then a Technic pin, and then you attach a wheel to it, and it allows you to stance the wheel. So this model does not roll, but I think this is definitely worth the sacrifice of the model not rolling. It looks so cool, stance like this. In the rear you have silver wheels with like the white wheel cover on it to represent this really cool racing wheel that's on the real car. And in the front you have basically an aero disc turbofan wheel on one side. So basically this is a 2x2 round brick with a round tile on top. On the other side you have a aero disc with like an interesting pattern on it, and so I represented that with quarter round tiles, which I think also looks incredibly cool. And then for the headlights, they have this X pattern over them like an old race car would have, so I decided to use metallic gold tiles for that. The headlights aren't immediately gold in the real car, but they appear to have like gold triangles almost in the sides where this X pattern is not. And so thanks to feedback from some of you guys in the Discord server, which I'll link down below if you'd like to join, I decided to use gold tiles and then use silver stickers from the Corvette set and the Koenigsegg Jesko set, and just basically cut the stickers with a tiny scissors and stick them on there, which this was an incredibly frustrating process, which took a lot of tries, and I was almost out of stickers, and it was very frustrating. And finally, I was able to get a reasonably good looking pattern on there, and I think it looks extremely cool. And then the model was finished, so here's a closer look at it. So now that the model is finished, let's talk a little bit about the car itself. So as you know, the Mercedes 190e is kind of like late 80s, early 90s Mercedes sedan. Then you had the Evo 2 race car version, so you had obviously the DTM race cars and the other race cars. So basically in real life, because there's a real life version of this car, which I might not have mentioned in the beginning of this video, I think the real life car is a standard 190 with a body kit to make it look like a 190 Evo 2 and all the Need for Speed stuff added on. Now on the real car, there are several details which I did not include just because it would have been too complicated. Like the words on the side of the car, which I just omitted because I didn't want to make like some custom stickers or something. And so guys, I guess that is it for today's videos. You guys seem to really like the design process videos, which is great because I enjoy making them. And so this one's not how we normally do it. Normally I do it like vlog style, but hopefully we make future ones like that. I just didn't have the time to record this one like that. But yeah, like I said, I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Let me know what kinds of videos you'd like to see in the future, what stuff in my videos that you enjoyed, because I would like to focus more on stuff that you guys enjoy watching, obviously, because I enjoy filming basically all of it. Like I said, the instructions are available at the link in the description below, and that's it for now. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will maybe see you next time.